أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Dr. Suzy Ismail from Cornerstone. I'm happy to be with you again in our Ramadan Resilience Program. We've been talking a lot about the different stages of heavy emotions when we respond to difficulties, tests, tribulations, or negative incidents in our life. We've talked about the stages of grief, we've talked about sadness, we've talked about sorrow, and we just began to dive into the topic of depression. Now, many times when we talk about depression, the response that we'll hear in the Muslim community is that the Muslim can never be depressed. And that's a really difficult statement because it perpetuates the stigma that depression, which is a mental health illness, is something to be ashamed of. It's something that means you're not a good Muslim. But we know that's not the case. And we know that's not the case because when we look to the Quran, we see a beautiful example in the story of Maryam. Maryam alayhi salam. In the Quran, we are reminded that she was a woman of faith, that she was a woman among the women who were chosen, who's promised Jannah. We know that in her younger years, as she was raised in the mihrab, and her uncle Zakaria, who was also a prophet alayhi salam, would come and visit her. He would see with her the fruits of summer in winter time. And in winter time, he'd see the fruits of summer, and in summertime, the fruits of winter. And he would ask Maryam alayhi salam, where is this coming from? And she would say that this is from Allah. هذا من عند الله. That Allah Azza wa Jal could say, كن فيكون, be, and it would be. Now, if we fast forward through the years, as Maryam alayhi salam grew in her faith, grew in the strength of her tawakkul, she is approached by Jibreel alayhi salam. And she's approached with a heavy test when Jibreel alayhi salam tells Maryam alayhi salam that she will carry a child. And her response is, how can this be when I am chaste and I have not been touched by a man? And Jibreel alayhi salam refers back to that rock of faith that she had previously that we're reminded of in the Quran. And he tells her that Allah Azza wa Jal wills it, and he can say, kun fayakun, be, and it will be. And she is reminded of that faith. Now, when Maryam alayhi salam is in the most difficult stage in this test, when she is giving birth to Isa alayhi salam, and she is going through those pains of labor, she cries out. And she cries out with a beautiful statement that's important for us to remember, where she calls out and says, يَا لَيْتَنِي مِتُّ قَبْلَ هَذَا وَكُنْتُ نَسْيًا مَنْسِيًّا. Oh, if only I had passed before this and had been of those who were forgotten. How many of us have experienced moments, how many of our children or our teens have experienced moments in which the struggle was so hard, the test was so big, that they questioned for a moment, that they asked and said, would it be better if I wasn't here? What if I didn't exist? And this thought train, this concept that today we conceptualize as ideation, and the thought of maybe not being here, it is a dangerous path. But it's also a path we need to understand. Because when we look to the response in the Quran, when Maryam alayhi salam makes out this plea and says in her moment of pain these words, she is not reprimanded. She is not told that she should be grateful, that she shouldn't say that. Instead, a voice calls out to her, min tahtiha, from beneath her, and the voice says, لا تحزني, do not be sad. And the voice continues by commanding Maryam, هزي إليك بجذع النخلة, shake to you the trunk of the palm tree. And she's commanded to shake the trunk of the palm tree as an action. She's commanded to look to the stream that runs beneath her. And these are all things that we want to keep in mind, that when someone is struggling with depression, they may not be able to go take that walk with you. They may not be able to articulate what they're feeling. But guiding them towards maybe doing something, maybe telling them, hey, maybe taking a shower would help a little bit. Can I get you something to eat? Maybe that would be beneficial. But not reprimanding them, not telling them that they shouldn't feel that way. And then we see that Maryam alayhi salam is also told to not speak, to go back to her community, to go back to her town, and to not say a word. How many times when somebody is struggling with depression, do we sit them down and say, talk to me. How can I help you if you're not telling me what's wrong? And yet here, in Maryam's point of pain and her difficulty, Allah Azza wa Jal tells her to go back to her community, to be with the people, but to not speak. And this is such an important point when we try to push a person who is struggling with depression to speak, that it may not be what they need at the moment. Sometimes all they need is to hear the words, left, left, and for you to sit beside them, for you to let them know that you're there. Your presence beside them may be all they need. And so recognizing that there's different ways for us to tackle depression, but by first understanding that again, it is legitimate. It is not a sign of weak iman. It is not an indication that we are not praying enough or we're not close to Allah. So I hope that we can continue together to better understand depression, to recognize the signs and symptoms of depression, and to know what to do about it. Join us in our next episode when we dive into that. Jazakumullahu khair. Assalamu alaikum.